Hello and welcome to Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Carol Newcomb-Aludo on the CMC Board of Trustees. CMC welcomes everyone, of course, members and guests. Today's forum, Honda's Impact in North America, is sponsored by The Ohio State University and Thomas and Marker Construction Company. Each of these groups represented by many friends and associates. Please help me thank them today. Now, let's welcome Dean David Williams. He's Dean of the Professional Colleges and Dean of Engineering at The Ohio State University. David?
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, CMC. The Ohio State University is proud to support the Columbus Metropolitan Club as they convene these weekly community conversations to engage us in thought and to share knowledge. I'm particularly proud to be asked to introduce this discussion from the Honda team here. Honda is just an extraordinary supporter of Ohio State University and the community, from K through 12 education, particularly in the STEM disciplines, through supporting our students, well over 100 capstone design students, being funded by Honda, dozens of interns every year, and of course over the years hundreds of employees at Honda, all from Ohio State University. So in all aspects of what we do at the university, from teaching and learning through research and outreach, Honda is our finest partner. They have the longest sustained United States manufacturing presence of any international automaker. They've contributed to the U.S. economy through manufacturing, research and development, through jobs, through finance and exports, all based here in America. So let's turn to our experts to explore the past, the present, and the future of Honda. Please welcome Executive Vice President of Honda of America Manufacturing Incorporated, Tom Shoup. Manager of Talent Acquisition and Deployment at Honda North America Incorporated, Scott McLemore. Equipment Service Technician at Honda North America, Lewis Gleason. And our host, business reporter at Columbus Business First, Dan Eaton. Dan, the podium's yours.
All right. Welcome. Thank you all for being here to listen to this discussion, which we all hope will be enlightening to you. So in prepping for my small role here, I was doing a little research on Honda, and I don't know if this was coincidental or not, but the first Honda motorcycle, the first products produced here in Ohio, rolled off the line almost exactly 40 years. We're a week short. If this was next week, it would be almost 40 years to the date that the first Ohio-made, U.S.-made Honda product, Honda vehicle rolled off the line. So I found that little tidbit to be interesting. Again, don't know if that was coincidental or not. Since that time, though, starting with the motorcycle plant, which opened in '79, the Marysville auto plant opened in '82. And since then, it's just been an assortment of facilities. You have a transmission plant in Russell's Point. You have the R&D in Raymond. You have a second auto plant in East Liberty. You have the Anna engine facility. You have the Performance Manufacturing Center, which if you ever get a chance to visit that place, do it. That's where they make the NSX supercar, which is a fascinating vehicle and a fascinating process. Altogether, that's more than $11 billion of investment in the state. You're looking at 15,000 employees. That's more than Honda and GM combined. If you want to throw Chrysler in there, the domestics have more, but not by much. It's a lot closer than you think, employment-wise. So Honda obviously has a long and huge presence here in this community, and that's what we're going to talk to you about today. So before we can talk about the present and the future of Honda, I wanted to talk a little bit about the past. So I thought I would throw this out to Scott and Tom. Can you give us a sense for what Honda was like when you were starting, in terms of, what were the plants like? What was production like?
You want to go first? Or go on? I'll take that one first, since I think there must be some significance of why you want to talk to me about the past compared to my colleagues here. But anyway, I have been at Honda for 31 and a half years. And when I arrived at Honda, it was 1988. And this area was quite different back then, as you might imagine. Honda had been building cars for about 5.5 years when I got there, and was growing dramatically. Growing very quickly, expanding, end over end. Trying to find original equipment suppliers was a big challenge, and we had just purchased the land from the state of Ohio that included the TRC and included space to expand our manufacturing with our East Liberty plant and to expand and develop R&D, research and development operations there. So everywhere we looked, we were growing. We had announced something we called a 5-part strategy to make a self-reliant vehicle company in North America. And so my memory of that time was everything was at high speed. And there was, as a result of that, there was tons of opportunity. And the feeling there, when I joined Honda, it was a little strange for me. I was in Washington, D.C., wearing one of these every day. And I showed up, and a guy in the audience back here handed me a uniform in a parking lot one day and said, "Here's what you're going to be wearing." That was a little different for me, but it was quite freeing and quite natural for me. Once I got in there, I didn't quite feel like the ice cream man once I joined the workforce at Honda. So I got called that quite a bit. But anyway, nevertheless, it was a very exciting atmosphere. It's an environment that I think I would like to leave as a legacy to all of the Honda associates that are working there now, because there was a bounce in everyone's step. There was a sense of pride that people were involved in doing something that was inherently valuable. And that's kind of how I felt when I got there. I was proud to be a part of that team and still am today. Scott?
Yeah, so I started Honda right out of college, January of 1990. And I was an engineer in the Marysville auto plant in the weld department. First in my family to go to college and left home. I was from the Chicago area originally and fascinated by technology. So I'm always hesitant to say this because people kind of look at me kind of funny, but I'm not really a car guy. But after 30 years, I've learned to appreciate the quality of Honda, and Honda's the best cars that are made. But what drew me to Honda really was the technology. Manufacturing engineer from Purdue University, was excited about the possibility of working for a company that I thought was innovative. And so when I showed up in the weld department, I had no idea of the type of opportunities I was going to get going forward. I was just interested in robotics and automation, and so I had the privilege of being involved with many different teams there. The equipment at the time was not anything like it is today. The robotics were hydraulic driven, and there was a lot of pneumatics and hydraulics used within the facility. But we were constantly looking at how we were going to upgrade and continue to improve our efficiencies and the processes within the department, really all focused around quality, which I learned quite a bit right away from being there. And then also, I think the feeling of what Tom mentioned of teamwork and the pride, that hits you right away when you're working within the company. And it's like a small family. And so for me, I had an opportunity to be part of a new model team that went to Japan. And I got to experience that, learn from senior associates that were there, bringing back some lessons learned and some new techniques, as well as culturally, first time going to Japan. But there was just a real fascination with how we were using the technology and to manufacture the great products that we do. Looking back on it now, I was just really, that feeling of excitement showing up every day to work. You didn't always know, depending on what my role was, you didn't always know it was going to come at you, which made it really exciting and really, I think, is part of what's kept me there now almost 30 years.
What model were you working on when you went to Japan?
Yeah, that was good question. I believe it was the 94 model Accord. And I think during that time period, we were building the wagon, which was brand new for us with the tailgate. A lot of interesting nuances with that particular model and that product. I was part of the quality development team as well, so spending time in the plant when no one was there, or not many, production wasn't going on, but we were testing some of the new model activities. It gave you an interesting perspective, and I'm sure Lewis has some of those opportunities as well when production's not running and you get to experience the technology in a different way. But yeah, it was 94 model Accord.
Before we start picking on Lewis here, I got another question for Tom. Tom, what were some of the key? You talked about Honda wanting to become a self-sufficient, less dependent upon Japan. That's why more and more facilities open here. What were some of the key achievements to reach that point where North America, particularly Marysville, can run mostly on its own?
Well, I think looking back on it, it's kind of interesting. I feel in some ways my career is an example of what was possible at Honda. And I think it was an atmosphere where we were growing very rapidly, but it created a lot of opportunity if you had initiative and will and spirit to engage. But I think also there was a lot of cross-cultural learning that was going on. And we had a number of Japanese that were here teaching us various aspects of manufacturing and other things. And then we also sent lots of people to Japan for short-term training and that sort of thing. And then we decided to start sending people there for longer-term training. And so a lot of what we were doing was trying to transfer what we called know-how back and forth and create a synergy there. I was a part of the group that went to Japan. I followed the guy who gave me the uniform there, and the guy who created the program is sitting next to him in the back there. But nevertheless, we called that North American Task Group, and it was one example of how we were trying to be self-reliant, going to Japan, learning about new model and all the intricacies of that, learning about production control, management, and then transferring that back, and that's something that's been a hallmark of our operation. So as more and more Japanese went back to Japan or other places, we assumed that role for the other facilities in North America. And we now have that role also inside our own facility because we have a lot of young people like Lewis who are on board now, and we're trying to aggressively transfer our culture and our values and so forth. But there was a huge emphasis on the importance of people, which comes directly from our founder. And Scott talked about the technology, but our founder viewed technology was a tool of people. And without people, there could be no success. And so that was something that was really different at that time, way back when. And the other thing, since I am the elder statesman here, I'll reserve the right, but I don't know how many of you remember what the economy was like here in the late 70s or early 80s and what a huge risk it was for Honda to choose to locate operations here in Ohio. But the reason I was in Washington, D.C. was because I grew up around Cincinnati, and there weren't a lot of jobs here. There wasn't a lot of opportunity for people like me and my friends to find a valued employee here in the state of Ohio. So I followed a different dream and then ran into these people from Honda and had the opportunity to come back to Ohio. And for that, I was extremely grateful. And I know in our case, we probably couldn't imagine what would happen as we were working through all these things. We were very busy, but we did have some foresight and some intention for growth. And it's really made a huge impact, I think, on on the economy and the possibilities for people like Lewis.
Well, Tom is doing part of my job for me here. He's just setting me up nicely with these transitions. So, Lewis, tell us a little bit about your background, your Honda experience. What do you do, and what brought you to this opportunity at Honda?
Well, I started out right after high school. I graduated, and I applied for Honda. I actually had to wait to get my diploma so I could start. And then as I started there full-time, I went to college full-time, which was electromechanical from Marion Technical College. And from there, I transitioned into an internship job back in weld shop as a maintenance technician. And then from there, I graduated and got my degree, and then they hired me full-time. And, you know, just working for Honda, you know, I've seen what it does for my dad and my mom, and I mean, they're in the audience right now, and it's just been great for the whole family. And, you know, Honda's always supported different events, and they've always been very vocal in, like, schools, and especially coming from, like, a Union County school, which Honda's very close to. They just try to help out the different communities a lot, and I just wanted to be a part of that. I always like cars. I always like just seeing the videos of all the robotics, and I just wanted to always be a part of that.
What is there a typical day in your job, and if so, what's it like? Or if there isn't a typical day, tell us more about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, usually my day is a very wide range of, it could be, you know, very more slow pace, because it's usually not very good when they have to, you know, call me, or, I mean, something's...
Maybe I shouldn't be asking this question.
Well, I mean, I troubleshoot on a lot of their electrical systems, and, you know, there's just different things that could happen. And usually, you know, my typical day, I go in, put on my whites, and then we have a big meeting before work, pre-shift, and they talk about what kind of day they had, if they had a certain problem here or there, and then like between shifts there's like a gap time, and then we'll go and try to see if we can correct it, or if we have to plan for something. There's just endless things that could possibly happen between, and just try to make it ready for production that night.
Yeah. Do you work in a specific area?
I work in all of weld shop, anything that is remotely related for weld. I am a part of their equipment or robotics or anything that's in there, I'll work on. What
are some of the issues you end up running into, you know, that you have to troubleshoot?
I mean, sometimes we'll have robots will have alarms, or they'll get something out of sequence, and we'll try to get it back into normal operation, or, you know, something constantly doing something over and over repetitive, it'll eventually wear out. So I'll have to replace parts or try to figure out how to make it run until next shift, till third.
Gotcha. Scott, we have full disclosure. I've talked to Scott in the past on this topic I'm going to ask him about. But you know, one of the challenges I think facing Honda, a lot of manufacturers, is the employment base, trying to find people like Lewis to come in and take these jobs, train for these jobs. Tell us a little bit about the challenge that you see out there and how Honda's working to address that.
Sure. I'll start first by saying that Lewis is making his job sound very easy. And then it's not. They call him when they can't figure it out. So, but the challenges are threefold. So Honda's been here now 40 years, and we're seeing a lot of associates become retirement eligible. And so there's a lot of talent and tribal knowledge that within the organization that is walking out the door or getting ready to walk out the door. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we talked a little bit about this, but technology has changed and is changing dramatically over the last 5-10 years. So the equipment that Lewis is working on is nothing like the equipment I worked on. First of all, like I mentioned, we've moved from a mechanical, hydraulic-based automation and robotics to now electronic-based, so servo systems, much more sophisticated than what I was working with. In addition to that, these systems are all integrated. So you have mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, electronic systems that are not only electronically driven, but they're networked. So not only does Lewis have to understand how to use a wrench effectively and what hydraulics are and mechanical systems, but he also has to understand potentially how to use his smartphone to connect with the network systems that are operating that to be able to troubleshoot effectively. So the equipment is very different and much more complex. Thirdly, the challenge that in addition to that, we're finding that fewer people are pursuing pathways in manufacturing. So due to a lack of awareness or due to a lack of understanding that manufacturing is not dirty, dark, and dangerous, but it provides great opportunities, we have to work very hard to raise the awareness that they're great careers and great opportunities. So I think those are the challenges that we're faced with now, and not just Honda, but all the manufacturers in Ohio and across the U.S. have very similar challenges.
How have you been addressing that to get that message through that it's not dirty and dark?
Yeah, so Honda's taken an approach that's both, I'll say, comprehensive and collaborative. So I'll begin with the comprehensive piece. We launched an Ohio-based workforce development initiative back in 2015 called EPIC. And the purpose of that initiative was to raise the awareness of the great opportunities in manufacturing at Honda, but also to begin to train and prepare the future workforce. EPIC initiative reaches across middle schools, career centers and high schools into community colleges, and then once associates are working for Honda, we continue that with some ongoing training. One example of that is in middle school, to reach those students where we realized that high school was going to be too late. Decisions are already made, and students are pursuing a pathway. But we needed to get to both the students and the parents early, specifically the moms. I think there's some study that shows that mothers tend to be the influencers with children when it comes to education and future careers. So we partnered with a local gaming company called EdHeads, and I actually brought some cards. So after the event, if people are interested, we co-developed a game with them. That's an online video game that allows a student to learn what it's like in a manufacturing operation. The student role plays their first day on the job as an equipment service technician, and they apply middle school math and science to the game and troubleshooting and learning about programmable logic controllers, robotics, limit switches, and so on. So we found a lot of success with that. We've had over 500,000 plays across the United States with this game. So it's free to play, and it's an innovative, we think, a way to reach middle school students. In addition to that, we've partnered with schools in the area with mobile manufacturing labs. And these labs go out and give students hands-on experiences with robotics and laser engravers and 3D printers. And then we've partnered with schools like the Marysville Early College High School, where students have the opportunity with integrated curriculum, both hands-on and college learning, in this case, through Columbus State Community College, to get ready for manufacturing careers, whether they start right out of high school or whether they continue on for some post-secondary education. They're ready for manufacturing careers, and they understand what those careers are like. And then at the community college level, we've partnered with many colleges in the area, like Lewis with Marion Tech, Columbus State, and we have 4 other community college partners that provide electromechanical engineering technology opportunities. So they're either taking and have opportunities for internships or work-based learning through work study like with our partners at Columbus State, where students work for us between a semester or up to a full year applying the skills and knowledge that they've learned in the classroom. We do this with the intent of hiring those students as full-time technicians when they're finished, and we pay them a salary while they're working for us. And then lastly, like I mentioned, we have technical development centers, so as associates come on with us full-time, we continue that development opportunity with those associates to learn specific Honda training once they're there. Or we provide tuition reimbursement for those that want to go on for continuing education, whether it's two-year college or whether it's four-year university and college opportunities once they've completed their two-year degree. So that's the comprehensive piece. If I could speak very quickly to the collaborative piece, none of that would be possible without partners, community partners in the area, both education, economic workforce development, some of which are in the room. So I'm going to start with Columbus State Community College. Great partners for us and align their curriculum in their program to create a pathway for students to become equipment service technicians within our operations, given our technology that we have. They implemented the work-based learning program, Work Study. Students work for us for a full year, again, with the intention of hiring them. They continue coursework during that time period, so they're getting paid while they're continuing their education and completing that two-year degree. Fantastic opportunity for us, great partners, and we continue to expand on that, not just with Honda, but with other manufacturers in the area. To build on that even more, we've partnered with OMA, so my good friend and partner Eric Birkland at the Ohio Manufacturers Association wants to take that across the state. And so what he's done is he's pushed for manufacturing sector partnerships. So we want to take what we've learned through partnering with educators like Ohio State University and Columbus State, and we want to expand that across the state and replicate that type of work-based learning, not, again, just for Honda, but for our suppliers and other manufacturers. So we really feel like we need to tackle this together. We're not going to solve this workforce issue by ourselves. That's not the way it's going to work. We have to work together and share best practices, market manufacturing together, and then work with state government and work with economic development across the state in order to solve this problem. Because right now, as we turn the spigot on, there's just drips or a slow flow of talent coming out. We need a full stream of talent coming to us. Otherwise, we're going to have some real challenges in the future.
I'm going to switch gears, pun fully intended there, to a broad industry product question. So this one's probably for you, Tom. If anyone pays attention to the auto industry, one of the interesting things that's happening is people aren't buying cars the way they used to. But Honda still is very invested in the car segment versus light trucks, SUVs. Why is that? Why is that important to Honda, while others are completely abandoning the segment in some ways?
Yeah, it's interesting because at a meeting I was at East Liberty this morning with some associates, that same topic came up, and we're committed to passenger cars. We believe the heart and soul of our company is making engines, basically, but we're also committed to the things that got us here, so to speak, the Accord and the Civic. And are believing that there's going to be a continued need. And we see the market shrinking, but we have no intention to give up on it. And we think it'll be an important part of our business for the foreseeable future. That doesn't mean that we're not recognizing and trying to leverage the light truck and the overall truck SUV market as well. And you may know that I used to be plant manager at the East Liberty Auto plant back in the 90s, and we made two small Civic products there at that time. We've transformed that plant into a light truck SUV plant over the period of the last 15 or so years. And we have the capability to make any of our lineup there in Ohio, as well as the investments we've made in our Alabama facility to expand our presence in that market. So just like with any other case, we're constantly trying to adjust our production in a flexible way to balance the market and address what we think the market is interested in. Same thing applies to application of future technology and electrification as an example of that. So I think the announcement most of you probably heard where we eliminated one shift at our Marysville auto plant was in sync with that kind of philosophy and approach about balancing with the market and preparing ourselves for the future.
We're going to move to audience questions in a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask these guys one more question first, but if you have questions, please queue up over at the microphone. One more question here, guys. What's the biggest challenge facing Honda going forward? Is it employment? Is it more of a macro factor, industry factor? What's looming out there that needs to be dealt with?
I don't want to dominate, but I could.
All right. Well, given my role of talent acquisition, I'm going to say talent. Now that I'm kind of living it every day, I've been to several of these types of panels before, either participating myself or in the audience, and it's always led by the challenges, and those are significant. I think those are significant. I think we need to work very collaboratively and intentionally about preparing our young people as well as adults to either skill up or become part of a pathway that leads to jobs in manufacturing. And that obviously includes technology, but also there's a lot of discussion around human skills. So I think there needs to be a focus where business is working with education and we're figuring this thing out together. I think that's how we're going to have to go about it. But I think talent and the shifting demographics of the workforce are things that really need to be considered and worked on together.
No one wants to line up to ask questions?
I'm more from the equipment side, so I would say getting the new equipment so we can build the quality product that everybody wants. Everything is always switching gears between SUVs or four-door cars, or, I mean, at Marysville, we can run any model at any time. So we're always switching gears, making sure that our equipment is set up and ready to run whatever for the market, whatever changes.
Yeah, and I would just add to that from my perspective. I think probably the greatest challenge that we face is the one I referenced in the early going, which is about how do we transfer our culture and our philosophy and our values to the people of the future who can keep our company growing forever in Ohio and elsewhere. And I think that's a good example of we need people like Lewis to control the technology, to manage the technology, or we recognize that we can't have success. So I think that's the constant issue or challenge that we have now, is to make sure that transfer happens and that they can approach whatever lies in front of them with the challenging spirit.
Okay. It is CMC's tradition to take audience questions. Please state your name and ask your question. Please avoid editorial comments. I've been given the authority to cut you off, and I will. Please remember, questions end in a question mark. Let's get started. First question.
Yes. Hi, Andy Campbell. Thanks so much for being here today. So we're talking about Honda, but I think people tend to overlook or maybe not realize the impact of a Honda beyond your factories and manufacturing facilities. Could you talk a little bit about the number of people employed through affiliate companies or OEMs and some of the economic impact on that of the state of Ohio?
Yeah, I'll touch on that. We have about 15,000 manufacturing associates in our operations in Ohio. And I was so surprised a few weeks ago. I spoke at an event in another part of the state, and people didn't realize that we had a significant engine plant located in Shelby County, Ohio, which produces about 1.18 million engines a year. So sorry about that. The expanse and nature of our operation, even inside of Honda, is not completely well known as we think sometimes. We, in the process of developing our supply base, Ohio's been a really important part of that, and we have I think it's about 150 different original equipment suppliers in Ohio, and we spend annually over $10 billion on purchases from them. And so if you do the economic multiplier on the workforce opportunities and that sort of thing, it's fairly significant and a contribution to the state. But across the region, we have over 800 of those suppliers and purchase about $30 billion or more per year from them. So it's quite an economic engine, I think, in that regard.
Thank you. I'm Jane Scott with the Metropolitan Club. So what impact is the current trade war having on Honda specifically, or perhaps some of your suppliers here in Ohio?
I'm going to ask Louis to ask that. No, I'm just kidding. If you don't mind, Louis, if you could. Well, it's obviously has had some impact on our business, but we're working hard, like a lot of other companies and so forth, to anticipate, understand what that is, and take the countermeasures that we may need to do in some cases to mitigate the impact. But so far, it's not been a significant impact on us. But as things progress, I mean, we're monitoring to see what kind of things we need to do. But we generally, we tend to follow our philosophy and our company principle in terms of decisions that we make about our business. So, momentary swings back and forth in these kind of trade issues or whatever it may be aren't going to be a huge determinant in us making any kind of big decision strategically.
Hi, I'm Amanda Sage, and I also work with the Metropolitan Club. I have to ask the millennial question. Can you talk more about your plans for electrification?
Did you say the plans for?
Plans for more electrification.
Yeah, I can talk generally about them, but basically we're like a lot of our competitors. Everybody's looking at what is the right technology or the right formula that's going to be successful in the product in the foreseeable future. Our president, I think it was about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, announced globally that our intention is to electrify up to 2/3 of our fleet by 2030. That's a huge challenge for us, and it requires not just a change in the flow of our business or the parts acquisition or different kinds of processes we might have to change, but it also requires that we prepare our workforce for handling a different kind of technology and that sort of thing. And so we're working on a lot of that at this time, and we're in development and deep discussion about that, and that's part of that discussion about how we prepare for our future, because Ohio will be a really important part of that activity for Honda globally, and I think that is a good thing for the state and the economy. I might add one of our biggest concerns in that regard is what is the market going to accept in terms of the application of those technologies to the product and the limitations that they might have on consumer desires for how far they can go without charging and that sort of thing. So that's a big challenge. Yes.
I'm Carol Newcomb, and I have a similar question. What are Honda's thoughts and status on self-driving cars?
We've been kind of involved in various research activities and application of technologies in our current products. Some of our Safe Watch programs that we have on our Acura programs and so forth are examples of that, or I should say products. But we're continuing to kind of investigate and work with partners in that kind of area. We have a lab in the Silicon Valley where we spend quite a bit of time studying and trying to research and understand what kind of technologies from that realm that can actually be applied based on the infrastructure that we have available. And a lot of the things that we're doing with partners here, some of you may have heard about the Smart Cities activity, I assume, here in Columbus. We're able to work a lot with Ohio State Transportation Research Center, the state of Ohio, a number of different parties on making a kind of smart corridor, if you will, so we can experiment with application of a lot of those systems and technologies. And we were able to do that recently in Marysville, which was pretty exciting. But to say what level we're at and how soon we can be to a level 5 versus a level 3 or whatever it is today, I think it's going to depend on our infrastructure to support it. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bill Lafayette. I'm owner of Regionomics. And you briefly mentioned, Scott, the need for human skill development. And that's something I hear in my work all the time. People are just really, really screaming about the need for more soft skills. And I'm just wondering if you have any sort of insight into how we might partner with educational institutions and the like to build those up.
So currently I'm on a work-based learning kick, and I believe that is I don't know if it's the best way, but I think it's an effective way to allow young people to develop human skills. So, for example, we're partnering with The Ohio State University and Columbus State and Columbus City Schools and their STEM Industry Council and providing students with career readiness opportunities. So they learn how to write a resume, a personal statement, mock interview workshops, and then they have a summer internship. Many of these students have never had those experiences before, but I think it's, again, going back to my comment earlier about collaboration. I think if business wants to find talent that has these skills, they're going to have to do something about it. We can't sit idle and wait and keep posting positions and wondering why the talent doesn't have those skills. So I think Ohio's taken a good step. Part of what we're working on with the OMA is apprenticeship programs that probably won't look like they do today necessarily with registered apprenticeships. They'll include that, but I think working with educators in a very intentional way with going into the classroom and providing educators with experiences and students with experiences that allow them to practice and work in teams and communicate effectively, stand up in front of a group and speak. I think we need to figure out a way to do more of that. So I don't have a specific answer, but I do acknowledge that business has to partner with educators very intentionally and directly, providing opportunities, whether it's in the classroom or in the workspace.
Kermit Whitfield with United Way of Central Ohio. A lot of companies now and a lot of people in the nonprofit realm are trying to figure out how to create empowerment cultures in which people are empowered to do things on a daily basis. It strikes me that Honda has had that culture maybe from the very beginning. And I know part of your philosophy with folks like Lewis is to say that the person who's doing the job is the expert there and should really be listened to. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about empowerment culture, how important that's been to Honda, and what other folks can do to create that in their organizations.
Well, thanks for the question, Kermit. I think it's, and I really appreciate you bringing that up because that's something that I'm most proud of in my time at Honda is the willingness of our associates to actively engage, not just in the company business, but in the business in the community and the affairs in their communities. And that's been a hallmark of Honda ever since I joined the company, and it was there before, part of our kind of DNA, if you will. And I remember back in the day when we were talking a lot of Jinglish to each other, that was called being well accepted. And there's a priority of the company to be well accepted or accepted in the communities and regions where we do business and to become ingrained in those communities. And I think some of that basic focus was in the workforce that we were fortunate to hire. And then I think some of that was part of our DNA and our culture. And I think the combination of those things benefited us in those communities really well. We have made some additional programs and so forth that are available to attract associates, to give back to their communities, to engage in a lot of variety of different things. And I'm proud to say that you may or may not know this, just this year we reached the $100 million milestone of what we had given to our local communities in Ohio. And even more important to me is we've crossed 100,000 hours of associate service in the communities. And to me, that's extremely important because people are taking ownership. They see the responsibility that they have based on the economic fortune that they've had and so forth. So those programs, I think, will help us continue that culture and move us forward in that area for a long time, I hope.
Maybe I could add to that if you don't mind. So just to give some specific, not kind of specific examples, I think that Tom's referring to is business resource groups, and we're beginning to leverage those teams and those groups. For example, their women's business resource group brought young ladies in, I think middle school age, to our facilities to experience manufacturing, and they had hands-on activities. So that's just one example. And then our knowledge community, where associates can be part of a community sharing knowledge across electronic IT system in order for them to better improve their situation within their working operations, or sharing knowledge that could lead to some innovation someplace else. So those are two examples that I think Honda recently implemented, are the knowledge sharing community, and then the business resource groups that other organizations can do as well, even if they don't have our value or philosophy.
I might say, too, the person that started that initiative at Honda is in this room, and I think you know that person very well. And I'm the corporate sponsor of that, which scared my kids to death. I'm not technologically capable so much, right?
It's a learning opportunity.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the liberty of asking a second question. The story goes that Governor Rhodes at the time saw an article in the paper that said Honda was looking for a place to plant itself in the U.S., and he immediately jumped on that and told them they had to be in Ohio. That's a role that Jobs Ohio and the newly branded One Columbus takes on. What would you tell them to tell companies to attract them to come to Columbus? And what do you tell other suppliers that you want to come here? What attracts people to Ohio these days?
Yeah, I think I actually have the pleasure of being on the board of One Columbus and involved in some other aspects, as do some colleagues. But I think the biggest thing that we talk about is I mean, Ohio is established as a good place to do business, especially in Japan and other parts of Asia. It's a very attractive environment. The thing people always ask about is availability of workforce, and that's something that we talk a lot about. And as Scott said, we're engaged in all kinds of different activities because, as he said very well, that we see that as part of our responsibility to help develop that for the region. And I know there's a lot of people working on that. We work with Jobs Ohio quite closely and with a number of other partners to try to address that issue. But that's not an issue that's only in Ohio. Everywhere that we operate, we have the same concern and the same issue, and people are trying to take initiatives and synergize those so that we can improve that situation.
Yeah, to add to that a little bit, again, I'm going to go back to my main word of the day. It's collaboration. So what I'm experiencing and fortunately being a part of is collaboration that I think the state has not seen before. So, for example, in Central Ohio, again, through the OMA team, I'm fortunate to see organizations like the Ohio State University partner with Columbus State Community College to create pathways, meaningful pathways for students that are affordable and prepare them for the workforce, whether they're going to become technicians, engineers, whether they're going to be in accounting or business. Things like that are critical, I think, for the state to be successful. It's happening. It's happening. And I don't know that everyone realizes the momentum that is taking place and the effort that's going forward in Ohio currently, that's going to allow us to be one of the best, if not the best state in the country regarding manufacturing. So there's just a lot of great effort and a lot of thinking outside the box and moving beyond our own swim lanes, if so to speak, and really coming together to figure out how to do this collectively.
Hi, I'm Warren Fishman. Back in the 1960s, when I was thinking about going to college, I took a tour of a GM plant, and it was exactly what you said. It was dark, dirty, and very noisy. And I made a decision never to work in a plant. But more recently, I was lucky enough to take a tour of your Honda plant in Marysville. Also, about a month ago, I was in Japan and took a tour of the Mazda plant there. And I know I would have made a bit different decision if I'd have gone through those plants. They're light, airy, vibrant, and pretty exciting. Are we doing something to get high school kids to take tours of the plants? Because I think one of the things I told my son was he wanted to go into industrial engineering, and I said, don't do it, you'll end up in a factory, okay? And I think if we can change that attitude and perception, I think we can get a lot more young people thinking about working at places like Honda. Are we doing anything to get
absolutely. So Honda, we absolutely are. We've recently expanded the number of tours that we give. We've opened our technical development center, so the Honda Heritage Museum, which is across the street from the Marysville Auto Plant, is also an area that young people can come meet engineers, technicians, people in manufacturing that are accounting, HR people. What we've also begun to do is invite parents. So Manufacturing Day is coming up, October 4th. And there's a week of manufacturing, the Manufacturing Month. So we're really focused on providing young people and moms opportunities and experiences in manufacturing so that they can make informed decisions about the young ones in their lives and offer them guidance on great careers and opportunities in manufacturing.
So I'd like to add something on that. So I've actually had the pleasure of going to Marysville Elementary School and talking with STEM Night, and I've put together slideshows and videos, and I've showed kids of what we actually do and showed them all the processes and the flow of the equipment. And a lot of them get excited because, parents think, oh, they're just putting together a car, but they don't see all that goes into it and all the different jobs or career opportunities that their kids could possibly have by joining Honda. And another thing that you brought up about Honda being so clean, that's like one of their biggest things they take pride in is cleanliness. That's why we wear the Honda whites, is for, cleanness, shows that our quality is high and stuff like that.
All right. The answer is yes, and we love manufacturing.
That's right. We love manufacturing.
And on that note, we'll turn it back over to Carol.
Thank you. Please help me thank our speakers today and our sponsors. Our sponsors first, Thomas & Marker Construction Company and The Ohio State University. And of course, our speakers, Tom, Scott, Lewis, and Dan. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next week, I hope.